Good afternoon. It's 2:01 and we're ready to begin this board workshop. The purpose of the workshop today is to discuss the strategic plan for the school district going forward. And in order to introduce that, I'm going to ask Dr. Graham, if she would, to give us a few comments about what we were looking at and how she would like us to proceed today.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and thank you to everyone that's here that was a part of this process and is also going to be part of today's presentation or is just here to listen. What we're going to do today is share with you the outcomes and the goals and the objectives of the strategic plan, because that's ultimately what we're going to ask you to approve. What you received in advance also included indicators, which was the work of the collective thinking of the work groups, to give us some sense of how we would know if we succeeded. Those are more fluid. Those I'm going to say that's a limited list at this point because we believe other indicators will come forward as the work begins. So our team from UPD is here to talk you through the process and where we landed, and today is the opportunity for the board to give feedback. This will come to the board for approval once we have a sense that there's some consensus on the part of the board as far as the content of the plan. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Carlin and the UPD team.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Graham. It's our pleasure to be here with you this afternoon, our board members, Mr. Martin, Dr. Graham, and to our wonderful audience. We really appreciate all of the support that we have received as we have started down the journey of drafting our strategic plan. It is with great honor that I represent all of the wonderful team members that we've had that have been part of this process. And I do want to point out that the folks that you see, a variety of folks that you see representing the work groups and the steering committee are just that. They are representatives of a variety of team members, community members, business leaders, et cetera, that have been involved in the drafting of this plan. So basically what we have in front of you this afternoon, board members, is the agenda for today. We'll do some introductions so that you know everybody who's here. We'll talk a little bit about the purpose behind the method to our madness, so to speak. We'll talk about the process in terms of the process that we followed as we have drafted, and again, this is a draft strategic plan. Talk a little bit about the needs assessment. Every good plan starts with an assessment of needs and some findings, and included in that, of course, is mention of our accreditation report, which was one of the bases of our needs assessment. And UPD has reviewed that and also included that as part of the plan. We will talk a little bit about the strategic plan framework, and then we will jump into our large goals for the strategic plan. Our representatives here from the working groups will share with you information about the focus areas and the outcomes and the objectives associated with those focus areas. And then we will talk a little bit about next steps. And Dr. Graham started down that road, so we'll give you a few more details on that as well. So I would be remiss if I did not take an opportunity to thank profusely our members of our steering committee. We'll talk with you a little bit more about who comprised that particular group, but we are forever in their debt for having them step up and to be part of the process. We had our working group, 7 working groups that also came together and provided a tremendous amount of feedback relative to our 7 focus areas. And so I would ask in the audience, if you have been a member of the steering committee and or the work group, if you would please stand and let us give you some recognition. Well deserved. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank our working group leaders, members of cabinet, as well as other directors here at our district office that have served in a leadership role as members of our working groups. And so I would please ask that our working group leaders please stand and accept our appreciation for your extra efforts. Thank you. And we will take an opportunity to introduce each one of them individually as they come forward to make their presentation today. And then finally, and importantly, I would like to thank the members of UPD and Cross Joftis for serving as our consultants. It's been a pleasure having the opportunity to work with them. They are extremely professional, extremely easy to speak with, a number of our board members as well as our superintendent. and our leaders have had an opportunity to interact with them, and we really just appreciate their efforts. So I'd like to take an opportunity. To my far left is Kristen Smith. To my immediate left is Otis Rowley, and to my right is Scott Joftis, and just appreciate their work on the strategic plan. So thank you. And at this time, it's my pleasure to turn the microphone over to Otis Rowley, who will take us through the initial part of our presentation today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yeah. Good afternoon, Chairman Scott, honorable board members, Superintendent Graham, and everyone in the audience. I want to thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you this afternoon and to talk to you a little bit about the result of all of your time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears. Although there were not a lot of tears, I promise you. But there was blood and sweat. First, I want to start off talking to you about ultimately what is the purpose of the work that we have been engaged in since April. First and foremost, the strategic plan really is a roadmap, a business plan of action that where we are looking at trying to set a course for the district, a course that is measurable, that is actionable, and that is realistic. We are not, we never engaged in this work to kind of dream the impossible dream. Instead, it was very important that we kind of set the stage for the success of the district and for every single student within the district. We also see this first part of the work as really the beginning foundation that allows us to build upon that foundation, the action plan and action planning work and the implementation. The proof is in the pudding, and that's really the implementation work. I want to walk you through relatively quickly the process that we engaged in. You will be proud as board members to know that this was quite a comprehensive process. From the very beginning, we recognized that in order for this to be a strong plan, a realistic plan, that it had to be as inclusive as possible and as comprehensive as possible. We started off in April, really kind of working with district interviews, focus groups, a number of community forums, and just extensive document review, looking at what has occurred in the past, where we were currently, all of which is necessary, obviously, before you can start to set a stage for future activity. We had some initial findings and needs assessment work that was that came out of that, and then that led to the creation of the steering committee and the working group to take it to the next level and to move kind of from concept to planning work. This draft plan that is being presented to you today now kind of falls within your purview, although all of you had an opportunity to participate from the very beginnings, both in individual interviews as well as some of the focus groups and some of the group work at the steering committee level. Then the draft plan kind of goes back to the superintendent to pending your reactions and revisions, and then back to you for final approval. Once it is finally approved, and we would come to that a little later, then it moves back to the superintendent for implementation. I want to really, I cannot overemphasize how important anytime you are doing this type of work, how important it is that stakeholder engagement be taken exceptionally seriously. Right? We have been hired by districts who said they wanted to do a strategic plan, and they were not necessarily as serious as they needed to be, and we have pushed and pushed hard. To make sure that the community engagement, and when I say community, I mean with a capital C, the broader, as inclusive community was involved in the work necessary in putting together a strategic plan. You have a highly competent superintendent that you've hired who has a strategic planning background, who could have very easily produced a strategic plan of her own, but that would not have been the district's strategic plan. It would have been kind of marching orders from just your superintendent. You said, and she said, that this needed to be the district's strategic plan. And in order to achieve that, we had to do a heck of a lot of work to try to make sure that we heard both from internal as well as external customers about what the district should look like, what we should be measuring, and what we need to be successful. So that included internal staff in terms of district staff, talking to everyone and anyone who could and would talk to us, trying to get their perspective, to find out strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that may have been present. We also had a number of focus group sessions where we were able to kind of dig in a little deeper and ask some more kind of in-depth questions of different folk. I want to say we do this work nationally, and I don't know necessarily what's in the water in Lee County, but folks here do not seem to have any issue with communicating what's on their minds. And how they feel about what's working and what's not working. Yeah. So that's first of all. And though that makes it a little tougher for us to do our work, that made it better in terms of the plan. And then to be frank, that's what we wanted. I also want to very briefly say as well that of all the individuals that are on this slide in terms of focus groups, my hat goes off also to the district that there was serious consideration and serious opportunities for students to participate in terms of the focus group sessions. We get annoyed as heck when we go into a district and we are allowed to talk to everyone except for the students, which makes absolutely no sense, right, from our perspective and clearly from yours as well. And you should know in the student focus group, it wasn't just your honor roll students, your straight A. We had a spectrum of folks who, some of them have had challenged academic careers, and some of them probably are going to have no problem getting into some of the best, Ivy League schools. And that gave us a real picture. And folks, once again, as I said, because it's clearly in the water, they were very frank about what they wanted, what they didn't want, what they liked, and what they didn't like. And I think all of those things are reflected in the draft plan that you have in front of you. In addition to those focus groups and individual interviews and the document review that I talked about, we had the opportunity to get to know your landscape. We only got lost a couple of times. But your district, being about the size of a state, it was challenging to get around. But to your credit, you said, and we made it very clear that if we're going to do real engagement, that it had to be true community engagement. So sometimes we had a packed house. Sometimes there were a couple of people there. We had morning, afternoon, evening, so that everyone, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, anyone, regardless of their work schedule, could have an opportunity to participate. So if anyone comes up to you, honorable board members, and tells you, I didn't have a chance to participate, just wag your finger at them. Don't hit them, but wag your finger, because there was plenty of opportunity, and you made it very clear, and we have the miles on the rental car to show it, that we really tried to get around the entire district to give everyone the opportunity. And you should know that at every single one of these sessions, we had the exact same, so no one could say, well, I heard you did this at that, because it was very important in terms of fidelity and just making sure that the data was real and measurable, et cetera, that we did the same things at each one, so that everyone had the same opportunity to participate. After that work was done, we then went back and started to analyze the data, look at challenges and successes, and begin to put some conceptual work, some baseline analysis work based on our needs assessment and initial analysis of what we heard, and then was put together working groups and the steering committee. The working groups were really trying to try to have real in-depth conversations with those individuals who are going to be really firsthand involved in implementation, who could really test some of our ideas, could push back. But we did not allow them to be in the working groups just by themselves, right? So in addition to teachers and administrators and support staff who are in the midst of the work on a constant kind of day-to-day basis, we also had association representation and business and community representatives within the working groups to make sure that they kept the staff honest. And that push and pull is very healthy as you're putting together any strategic plan. The group that then was kind of tasked with holding the work group accountable was the overall kind of steering committee, and that was made up of some of the leaders, the mothers and fathers of Lee County, who really, within the faith-based community, the business community, the educational community, et cetera, some of our labor union representatives, et cetera, all these individuals to really hold the work group accountable and to make sure that what they were hearing and to make sure what they felt was crucial and important to the success of the district was in fact the work that was being done. And I know this may seem very kind of process-oriented, but it was the failure sometimes in the issues of education and education reform is less about the plan and more about implementation, right? But if you do not do all of this stuff in the planning process, there is a greater opportunity for failure in implementation. And I think we made the right decision to make sure that we had a process that was as inclusive as possible. So out of this, we found within in the needs assessment piece certain strengths that were present within the district. We've briefed you on many of these things. You are quite literate, so I'm not going to read these to you. But it's just these were some of the things that we found as being important strengths that were present within the district. And then there were also, though, opportunities for room for improvement, opportunities for us to expand and to grow. And two of these bullets that I really want to highlight, because I feel like in many ways they're so very much linked, is just really around the optimism about new leadership within the district, that even those individuals who shared or voiced their concerns about the district, 9 out of 10 of them would follow it with saying, though, that they were pleased that that there's a new superintendent, that the board seems to have an energy around where we want to go, and there was a hope that they were going to engage the community in future success. And so that improves community connections to schools and the optimism about new leadership. There was a lot of tie and connections between both of them, and something that I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted as we shared this stuff with you. I am not going to talk in detail about the vision and mission. It is yours. We didn't work on it, and we inherited it, and it was clear that you have said this is the vision and mission. But I do want to say, as it relates to the vision and mission, that in any strategic plan framework, that's the beginning, right? You're supposed to say, okay, we have a vision for a district. We have a mission statement that's guiding that work. And then everything else gets derived from that. So, we want to be a world-class school system. Okay, well, what does that mean? We want to, and our mission is to ensure that each student achieves his or her highest potential. Okay, if everything else is supposed to kind of come out of that, and then our framework, that was the beginning of that was the first step in this journey that we're taking, and putting together strategic plans framework. Out of that, then we have some global district-wide goals, and it's very important that you understand that when you're thinking of these district-wide goals, that yes, they need to be, as I mentioned earlier, measurable, actionable, and realistic, but, or I should say, and also, these district-wide goals, though, are constantly you are measuring your success, but they are constantly moving, right? There's this constant, you never quite reach exactly what you want on it, because you should always be pushing and to make sure you have that, that those overarching kind of district-wide goals are being reached. There are certain then key kind of focus areas with very distinct outcomes, and in terms of expectations that you as a board are measuring. And so when you think of your work as board members, the vision, mission, district-wide goals, and focus areas and outcomes, that is that's your baby, right? This is very much your responsibility, and the expectation in terms of statutorily and as otherwise is that this is where you set the course, very much so in terms of the strategic plan framework, and the objectives that are kind of coming out of those focus areas as well. Then there is work that you task your staff, which is the superintendent, and she tasks her staff, many of which are in the room, to move forward in terms of the strategy and action planning work to implement the goals, focus areas, and outcomes and objectives that you have set. I want you now to, as what you see in front of you in terms of this focus area 1, this is a sample, an example of kind of the outcomes table that lays a kind of a framework. This is not what is included currently in the plan. This is just to give you an example of what a finalized one would look like, so that you get a taste of it. So you would have a distinct kind of outcome. For example, district will be rated as an A district in years kind of 13 and 14. This would be, kind of the expected kind of measurement for it, the expectations for 14, 15, and so and forward from there. This is just an example for you to know. You should know in the last column where it says NA. That's because that data is not available as of yet. And of course, the other columns say to be determined, because you don't want to be arbitrary, right, in setting those expectations until you have that baseline data. Okay. And so this is just to give you an example of what ultimately that outcomes table would look like. So with that, just to give you a taste of the work that has occurred thus far by the work groups. A number of the work group members are now going to share some of their work and give you a deeper understanding of what happened within the work groups and what you can expect to see. And so with that, I'm going to start off actually turning it over to Donna, who's going to begin the conversation, who will then turn it over to the next one, and then it will come back to me to kind of close out. Donna?
Thank you. Good afternoon. As Otis said, all of the goals were determined with information from reviewing district information, community forums, and input from the steering committee. We are all here for the students, so it is fitting that Goal 1 is increased student achievement. Of course, we also know that achievement is more than test scores. The focus on meeting the mission is to enable every student to reach their highest potential. We need to focus on getting our students ready for whatever their potential may be, whether the direction is college, vocational, or career, and of course, to help prepare them for life that lies ahead. It is also important that this goal is supported throughout the district, not just in the schools, but throughout all departments in the district. Everyone working to do their part for the benefit of our students, to help them succeed. Jamie Mitchell is going to do a quick overview of Goal 2.
And unfortunately, I'm shorter than Donna. Goal 2 is increased retention of effective and highly effective employees. There's an importance of attracting, hiring, and retaining the best talent in all positions across the district. We know the quality of the teacher is the greatest predictor of student achievement. All personnel support student success. Some examples: recruitment process, hiring process, professional development, career ladders, transportation services, building maintenance, food and nutrition, paraprofessionals. Regardless of the position within the district, we're all in this together. We all need to work together. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Robbie Rebstorff. And of course, they chose me to speak to you about Goal 3, which is so important because I'm a communicator, and I promise I'll be brief today. Don't listen to Marshall over here. But I'm going to do my best because Goal 3 is increase family engagement and understanding of district initiatives and resources. Before I get into this, I first want to applaud you as a board, to just thank you so much for having the foresight of making this an action item, and an action item with timelines, and then allocating the funds to hire such a qualifiable firm over here that you've retained, because they knew how to go out in the community, reach out. And like you said, Dr. Graham is very qualified to do this, but then does it really give us that objective of view, hearing from everyone? And I was a part of a lot of the steering committees, a lot of the focus groups, a lot of the community forums and different things, and he hit it on the nail. You retained a group that allowed the frankness in that group. And man, was there a lot of frank comments, to the point that I just wanted to get defensive about some of them. But you know, that's not what it was for. It was all for everybody to give their objectives. And so thank you so much for doing that. Because as a member of the business community, I know that I speak for so many of us, and that's why they chose me to speak on this, because we understand as a business person and being a parent of a child, of just how important that it is to have this collaborativeness and the collaborative relationship that is not only from the district between the superintendent and the principals and all the support staff, but the collaborativeness with also engaging parents and the community and the businesses within that community that you're providing the workforce for. We know that it's so important, very important, for parents to be involved in their children's education. And we all know they want to be, but boy, that's so much easier said than done for so many parents today. But this is easier and can be accomplished so much better when all of us understand what the district, when this is all said and done, what the district's initiatives are that are going to come out of the strategic plan. Just what they are, and then we're all going to put the oars in the water and all row in the same direction, because there are going to be great measurables throughout this that's yet to come, that I know you've looked at a lot of them. And so once we all decide to put the oars in the water and we're going to go in that direction, we're going to step back and let it see that it works. And we're not going to wait to the end of 3 years, going to measure it every 3 years. Well, that's what a business person does, right? We don't wait until 3 years to see if we hit the mark. We're looking at it every year. And yes, so many things drive adjustments, but just having that baseline, get everybody going in the right direction. And it's also so good that we understand the initiatives, but also what resources are available to our community, to the parents, to the businesses through the district. And just one of those collaborative efforts I can speak of on behalf of the foundation of Lee County Public Schools is when Marshall collaborated, when our school foundation collaborated with the Southwest Florida Community Foundation, because sitting on that board, we took a different direction, and that direction was collaborative. We weren't going to be dependent on getting money from people's unfortunate estates and taking care of the community. We said we have to do it while everybody wants to do it and has their direction that they want to go. So we're going in a different direction on the Community Foundation. They reached out to us for the Future Makers. Your Lee County Foundation, the school district here of the 5-county region, had the greatest effect of all, because we all knew where we were going, what the direction was, and we made major accomplishments to the effect that we said, okay, Marshall, go ahead with Sarah up to, was it Louisville? Louisville, and get that money from the, the name just went out of my head, Lumina Foundation, which millions of dollars are sitting out there in grants. So that's that collaborative effort that we had with them that we're going to bring to keep enhancing and enriching the school. So it just all ties together. So with this goal that I will repeat, increase family engagement and understanding of district initiatives and resources. I think once we do all these things and you let the work groups, everybody who's given their time to bring this about, and once you approve it, I think we're just going to have wonderful outcomes. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm John Cecil from Lee Memorial Health System. I'm their Chief Human Resource Officer. And Otis, if you'll notice, we're going to get longer for each presentation because we really want to speak out, and we're very verbose, and I've been told that by a lot of people too. And I'm also going to beg for a few more minutes from the chairman in a second. But I do want to express my appreciation to Denise, Cindy, Dr. Graham, and members of the board for the opportunity for not only the Foundation for Lee County Public Schools to participate in the steering committee, but also for Lee Memorial Health System, a peer large employer for Southwest Florida. I felt the planners, Otis and his team, and the staff team from the school district listened generously to the input of the community and the participants of the work groups. Although this plan is lengthy, it is very comprehensive and should provide a good framework for moving forward. I am particularly excited to provide input on goal number 4, become a model continuous improvement organization. I am highly impressed with the work that has occurred, already in the school district, as evidenced by Tropic Isles not only being an A+ school, but being a recipient of the state of Florida's Sterling Quality Award. That is really some achievement. If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I would like to share some of my reflections of the Lee Memorial Health System's journey of continuous quality improvement, some lessons we learned, and relate to the school district's journey. Is this all right with you? Okay. After the millennium,
You get 2 minutes
I won't start with the book of Genesis either. After millennium, the healthcare industry was reeling from the massive payment reductions from the Balanced Budget Act and the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act. We had to find ways to cut costs while meeting rapidly escalating patient growth and demands for services and improved quality. In fact, Lee Memorial had just found its bottom line in the red for the first time in its long history, at least current history. A key strategy of the system was to focus on continuous quality improvement. Lee Memorial at that time had the good fortune to be one of the few healthcare systems in the country to be selected by General Motors to transfer its knowledge on lean operating systems that General Motors learned from Toyota. Simply how to improve processes, lower costs, take out waste, and improve quality and reliability. I personally feel, as part of that team at that time, the organization's focus on improving its operational processes was one of the key drivers in a 1-year turnaround of $22 million to bring the organization back into the black. Lee Memorial is still on that journey, now more than 14 years later. We have benefited substantially, but made mistakes along the way. If I may briefly share with you a few of the lessons learned, and I apologize in advance, and with Angela and Greg out there, I do have an HR bias, human resources bias. It is not about receiving the national award. It is about transforming the culture to continuous quality improvement. It is not about hiring a bunch of industrial engineers to provide technical training. It is about engaging and developing leadership and the workforce while deploying the training. It is about making the process and quality improvement a core value 24 hours, 7 days a week across the entire organization. It is about hiring the right knowledge leader to support the cultural transformation. It is about assuring that the staff closest to the work processes are the ones actually redesigning the work. It is about the governing board and leadership trusting the process and each other, holding the gains, and supporting the workforce to achieve the goal. What struck me about the school district's continuous improvement initiatives was the fifth graders' PDSA, Plan, Do, Study Act, that Cindy McClung shared with me several years ago. I was so awed by this and so proud, I actually had an opportunity to personally present this in Appleton, Wisconsin, to John Toussaint, CEO of ThedaCare Center for Healthcare Value and former CEO of the ThedaCare Healthcare System, a nationally recognized quality improvement lean organization. John himself is recognized nationally and internationally as one of the top thought leaders on lean and quality improvement. John was so impressed by the Lee School District that they were teaching these principles to their students, that he immediately followed up with his own school district board and to see what he could do as an individual to help develop similar programs within the Appleton and their school district. I could not have been prouder of Lee County and the Lee County School District for its accomplishments in this area. So thank you for your support all these years. Where is Lee Memorial with this journey today? Well, we still have a long way to go to transform our organization. One of the mistakes, as noted earlier, was to teach, not just to teach the technical components of continuous quality improvement, and fail to focus on embedding it into our culture. It took Lee Memorial 3 or 4 attempts at this leadership for this function before I think we may have gotten it right. In fact, I think we're there. I would like to introduce Mr. Wright to you. Roger Chen, Lee Memorial's Vice President for Organization Transformation. It's a unique title for an industrial engineer, but he really does deserve it. Roger is a unique industrial engineer. And I apologize if there's any industrial engineers in the audience. I'm not dissing you. But we do stereotype folks. But Roger's background has been around lean and quality improvement principles. Roger was a transformational leader for GE, General Electric's South America's operation. And then he ventured into healthcare and landed on the east coast of Florida. Being a good HR person, we found a way to recruit him over to our coast to share his knowledge. And I would like for Roger just to speak a few words about this goal. Roger Chen.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, board. Thanks for this opportunity. It awes me to have this opportunity to speak to you. And in my experience, getting called to the principal's office was never a good thing. I want to acknowledge Dr. Graham's deep study in history and quality principles, because we're all drinking from the fountain of Dr. Deming and quality principles. And the mantra in quality is, as quality goes up, costs go down. And where we are right now in our society, we have 2 incredible social institutions in healthcare and in education, where finding ways to fund these vital institutions really depends on us being able to extract the costs out of our systems. So, as John said, I have the privilege of working for an incredible healthcare system that puts patient safety and quality absolutely first. But we realize it's incumbent on us to find ways to deliver that incredible service every single day at a lower cost to serve. And that's really the philosophical or economic framing of some of the detail you'll hear as we get further into the plan. I'll also be part of another work group, so I didn't want you to be confused of the piece I'll be doing a little bit later, but wanted to introduce to you this high-level concept that John talked about. And there's really three things to help you remember this. First, it's mindset, then skill set, then tool set. And the error that a lot of organizations make when they attempt to start doing point improvement projects or process improvement with an expected ROI, you're teaching people tools that are typically consultant-driven that will be in conflict at times with their competencies or the culture. And then we know it doesn't stick. The consultants will leave. No offense to our great consultants led through this process. But then what do you have left in terms of sustaining the change that has happened? And so I also have an HR bias. This is very much people development work. It has to be built into the competencies of the leaders. So there's an element of this in everyone's job. There's a role to play. So the mindset piece first is very much the cultural work to understand where the current organization climate is, and then begin that alignment around the strategic plan, and to turn it from a strategic plan into a strategy deployment plan. And I think that's the phenomenal work you'll see in the work groups, is how to turn these great ideas into projects, enabling projects to the strategy. The groups will then come up with their targets, their indicators for their objectives. And the one thing I would directly lobby for is that this is very much real work that needs the right skill set and competencies to sustain it. The health system invested in a department not to do the projects, not to do the improvement work itself, but to be teachers to our managers, to our 600 managers and supervisors. We are teachers, but then more importantly, coaches, so that we learn how to inculcate this into the day-to-day job. And so the excitement we have now, if you come to Lee Memorial, you'll see frontline staff and their managers, but really talking about how they now have the permission to look across boundaries, to work together, to streamline processes, improve quality, improve the patient experience, improve the staff work experience, and ultimately lower costs at the same time. And so that's a little bit more narrative on what we're doing. And with that, I'll turn it over to our next presenter. Thank you.
Okay, last minute change. I get to do this now. So, we've now been through the 4 goals. On the screen, you will see the 4 goals and 7 focus areas. These areas will each tie into the goals and have specific outcomes. As Otis mentioned, this is a living document, and we will be constantly reviewing and monitoring things. Dr. Graham and the steering committee will closely monitor the outcomes for each area to make needed improvements, to stay on track to meet our goals. And with that, we're going to begin with our working groups, and Shanna Fletcher's over at the next mic.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman Scott, distinguished members of the board, and Dr. Graham. I promise we'll stick to our time limit. Our group will follow the rules. But your message was wonderful. It really was. Our working group, I'd like to introduce the speakers. First of all is Dr. Tim Ferguson. He is the Executive Director for Student-Related Services. And then we have Dr. Aaron Harrell, who is the Dean of College of Education for Florida Southwestern State College. And my name is Shanna Fletcher, and I'm the Executive Director for School Development, Elementary Schools. Focus Area 1 is about inspiring students to think and learn. And while creating this focus area, our group used research-based instructional strategies and other innovative strategies to ensure that all students meet high expectations and become critical thinkers and engaged citizens. Within our focus area, we developed outcomes. The outcomes are, of course, quantifiable measures that will provide evidence of progress towards the goals. The outcomes for the focus area to inspire students to think and learn are, of course, that the district will become an A district, and we truly believe that's going to happen very soon. Also, to increase the percent of students making 1 year's worth of growth in English language arts and in math in grades 4 through 10. To increase the percent of students graduating with a 4-year cohort, and also that the percentage of students graduating will self-report themselves enrolling into college, a vocational trade school, or entering the workforce at time of graduation. So at this time, Dr. Ferguson is going to take you through some of the objectives of our focus area.
Good afternoon. The first 3 objectives that we're going to talk about, objectives are process outcomes that the school district of Lee County will work to achieve in alignment with the mission that we've established for our district. In the, under the area of indicators, we'll provide short-term actionable data which informs the effectiveness of the implementation. It's our progress monitoring tool that we have. For the implementation of each of the objectives, we'll monitor those indicators as often as needed to determine if the objectives, if we're working toward meeting those objectives. If you look at objective 1.1, and I'm just going to highlight that particular objective, really begins with establishing and maintaining active and engaging learning environments in schools. And we know from the research that when students are actively engaged in their learning, that they learn more and at deeper levels. So to ensure success of all students, schools and classrooms need to be safe and orderly, inviting, and conducive to learning. To be conducive to learning, educators and administrators must hold high expectations for students' behavior and achievement and inspire students to be creative and problem solvers, and to ask students to demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways. Active engagement is part of the student and staff, and it's an important expectation. So that's just one of the objectives. The other 2 that I'll highlight just are providing that standards-based curriculum and to use formative and summative assessment data to inform the decisions that we make and to guide instructional planning. Now I'd like Dr. Harrell will continue with the other objectives.
And as a partner in preparing many of the transformational teachers that are hired in the school districts, we're very excited about Objective 1.4 and providing timely, targeted interventions, enrichments, and resources to all students to ensure academic and behavioral success, because we know that when qualified teachers do this, we see results. And as a parent of Lee County School District students, a community member, and a partner in educating early childhood educators, we're very excited that the district wants to become a model organization for advocating access to high-quality, inclusive early childhood and educational resources. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jeff Spiro, the Executive Director of Secondary Programs.
Thank you, Dr. Harrell. I had the honor of working Group 2, which was focusing on engaging families and then leveraging community partnerships. And a few of our representatives from our community group, Mr. Marshall Bauer, he's the president and CEO of the Foundation for Lee County Public Schools, and Ms. Carmen Ray Gomez, who is the director for the Hispanic Institute at Hodges University. I also saw Ms. Margaret Sirianni, and she was in the audience, if you could stand, Ms. Sirianni. She was also a member of our community group as well, and I wanted to recognize her for her group also. Thank you. So Focus Area 2 for engaging families and leveraging community partnership really was about developing a clear communication and understanding of the district's vision and their priorities. And there were 4 main objectives that the group came up with that are going to serve as our outcomes, and they are up on the screen. First, we'd like to increase the number of 5-star schools and Golden School Awards, and those are indicators when schools increase their business as well as their community partnerships. Secondly, we'd like to see an increased number of family members that attend not only school events, but also district events. Our third outcome was to help increase an understanding about the district initiatives and the resources that are available to both family and community members. And then finally, our fourth outcome was simply to increase the number of business and community partnerships. And Mr. Bauer is going to take us through our first two objectives.
Mr. Scott, don't say, uh-oh, we're going to be here all afternoon. Because I'm going to be quicker than both Robbie and John. Time me, Dr. Graham. Thank you for the opportunity to participate. I had the opportunity to participate at both the working group and the steering group level, and I appreciate very much that, because the foundation, as you all know, is all about engaging the business community and the community at large with what's going on in our school system. So I was asked to talk to you about Objective 2.1 and 2.2, which I know you can read as they're put up there, but I want to tell you that what we discussed in our group was the diversity that we have here. Many times people look at that as a challenge. It is quite the opposite. It is an opportunity, an awesome opportunity, because our students will be going out and competing in a global workforce. And they're not going to be meeting everyone that looks or acts just like them. In fact, they're going to be required to have the skills to work with a wide variety of people. So we are very much applaud these two objectives. Objective 2.1, respect all students and families' diverse perspectives, values, cultures, abilities, and beliefs. And Objective 2.2, remove barriers to community and family engagement and to develop mutual trusting relationships among parents, students, school districts, staff, and the community. And this whole idea of celebration was talked a lot amongst our group, where we said we need to have days where we're celebrating the various cultures that are represented in our school, whether it's through offering lunches that highlight the food from the community they come from, and use it as an educational opportunity to talk a little bit about that culture and that country that those came from. Making our parents that don't necessarily speak English as their primary language feel that they have a reason to come to the school, that they're welcome in the school. Because when we have engaged families, and more importantly, when we have engaged students, they take responsibility for their own learning. Thank you.
A man of his word.
He went a little over.
Good afternoon, Chairman Scott, board members, and Dr. Graham. I too want to thank you all, in particular Dr. Graham, for the opportunity to participate in such an eye-opening process for me, both as a parent and as a community member. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Objective 2.3 and 2.4. These objectives speak directly to relationship building. Relationship building not just within the school district, but with the surrounding community. This school district reflects the community. And I think we had some very passionate discussions about that within our group and what engagement meant, both from a parental perspective and community perspective. And as we see, we're excited to be able to identify that it's important that we develop an aligned network of community businesses, faith-based and philanthropic partners that work with the district. We talk a lot about the difficulties in terms of funding. And I believe that the stronger we build those relationships with community partners, the less difficulty we have in implementing programs and services that work for our students. I just want to give a quick example in terms of partnership building. When Dr. Graham came on board as superintendent, I had the pleasure of sitting down and talking to her about some of the things that we're trying to accomplish through the Hispanic Institute at Hodges University, in particular in the realm of research and information sharing. And I was very happy that she had accepted to be a keynote speaker for a conference I was holding. And to me, it was a real clear example of the fact that it's important for the leader of the district to be open to those opportunities and to utilize the resources available, in particular in my case as an education platform, to share information. Oftentimes we try to disseminate with our students, and we forget that there are other resources out there that we can really tap into. So the district wants to hopefully continue to develop those partnerships. Again, in relation to increasing information sharing and engagement for both parents and students at home, studies show, of course, that the more involved the parent, the more opportunity for success for the student. And we're seeing that the district is really invested in engaging parents both within the school system and outside of the school system. And I also want to mention that there are schools already doing wonderful things. As a parent, that was an eye-opening experience because, of course, I focus on the schools that my children attend, and it's wonderful to see that some of these things are already happening. It's just a matter of providing these opportunities district-wide. So I don't think we're too far off the mark here. So I congratulate the district in taking the time to really consider and to think about the students and to include the community in this process, because we don't exist in a vacuum. So thank you.
And now Dr. Peter Bohatch will do work group number 3.
Come on, Eric. I love ordering a captain around. Makes me feel good. Board members, Superintendent Graham, I want to take this opportunity to introduce a few of the members of Working Group 3. We've got Captain Eric Smith, who heads up the Youth Services Division with Lee County Sheriff's Office, Miss Lori Brooks, Coordinator of School Counseling Services, and Sue Groves, Coordinator for Health Services. Okay. Focus Group 3, or Focus Area 3, next slide. Ensure a safe and healthy environment for all. Wow. We came up with 3 outcomes. Decrease the percentage of students who are chronically absent from school. And that's students who are absent 10 or more days per semester. Decrease, second outcome, decrease the percentage of students with 2 or more suspensions, out-of-school suspensions. Third outcome, decrease percentage of employee absences due to sick leave. So, Captain Smith, you want to go ahead and take us to the first objective?
Good afternoon, board members. Captain Eric Smith, Lee County Sheriff's Office Youth Service Division. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this strategic plan. We have enjoyed working with Dr. Graham, Dr. Carlin, Dr. Bohatch during this process. Might be a little bit more boring right now because I'm not going to give you a bunch of stats and statistics and everything, and some of the stuff we like to keep in-house and secret what we're going to do in the future, so the general public sometimes doesn't know. Myself, Lieutenant Miller, and Lieutenant Pikulis have been able to address some concerns in reference to school safety and security during these meetings, and we all look forward to implementing these strategies as the school year continues. Just kind of give an example why we're such a big fan of strategic planning. The 2012 and 13 school year, we noticed our Baker Acts were going at an all-time high. We're up around the 260 mark. So we sat down with Sheriff Scott and our administration and my bosses and said, what can we do? So we went to NAMI, go to CIT training, crisis intervention training. All SROs went through that. We're proud to say 2013-14 school year, we had 158. Now, is that just because of the training or some school, students move forward? Could be, but we're just a very, very big fan of this. Again, we appreciate the relationship between the Lee County Sheriff's Office, our board members, Dr. Graham, our Lee County Commissioners, and the entire administration of the school district. If you have any questions during this process, I'll be more than happy to, and I'll keep the statistics out of this today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to work on this particular portion of the strategic plan, because it's very near and dear to our hearts, especially in student services. For Objective 3.2, Objective 3.2 is to ensure that all students have access to comprehensive student services. And there are many factors outside of the school that impact a student's ability to learn and grow in the classroom. And by directing resources toward the physical and mental health and well-being of students, the district will support students to be ready to learn in the classroom. Comprehensive school counseling programs provide services to all students while providing additional layers of intervention for those who may need more through small group counseling and individual interventions and counseling. And this is targeted towards the students who just need that extra bit to help remove those barriers. Comprehensive school counseling program and its approach, by its very nature, ensures that all students, and all means all, have access to comprehensive student services. A positive impact of comprehensive counseling programming is increased collaboration between all student services personnel. This includes school counselors, school social workers, school nurses, and also our mental health community and helping agencies in the community to serve the needs of students and their family unit. In order to remove barriers to learning, we will need to address increasing the number of school-based student service personnel at the school level for each student.
I thank you. As Health Services Coordinator, I was honored to be on this committee. Objective 3.3, to ensure that all students and staff have access to health and wellness opportunities. The indicators, I believe, they are not there, but I could say very briefly, the indicators were increased number of participation in health and wellness activities, an increased percentage of district health plan earning incentives for those staff members that would like to participate in that, and also an increased percentage of students participating in district-sponsored health and wellness activities. We all understand that physical and emotional well-being is key to living a well-balanced and productive life, and participation in and collaboration with community programs would promote the health and wellness and definitely have a positive effect on our students reaching their highest potential. As a committee, we could envision the staff and the students and the parents as well very willing and wholeheartedly participating in these programs. Thank you.
Okay, that was some good stuff. We look forward to getting to work. Next up, we've got Dr. Greg Atkins, Assistant Superintendent for Operations.
Good afternoon, board members. My pleasure to be here this afternoon. And first of all, I want to recognize and introduce the folks here from Working Group, our Working Group number 4. First of all, Dr. Shirley Chapman, who is, she's an executive committee member, also on the NAACP Educational Committee and the Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee. Arlene Mendez is the secretary to the executive director of student-related services, which means that she runs the show. And I can also tell you that she was a huge support to me facilitating this particular work group. I also want to recognize Sam Stewart out in the audience today. Sam, retired superintendent, was a huge resource and help, provided us materials, great advice, kind of been there, done that. And it's really great to hear how other districts do things. He's also really tapped into some of the current research and the consultants that are out there, so he was a huge help. And I have to acknowledge John Cecil sent a couple of his systems directors, I believe, and I hope I don't get these names right, Christy Rigel and Carol Simmons. And, you know, you heard him talk about Lee Memorial's journey. Well, they had a lot of great ideas that they helped shared with this particular subcommittee that, you know, I'm sitting there scrambling to write all this stuff down, but we're going to stay in touch with them because I think they're going to continue to be a huge resource. So having said that, let's go to the next slide. Focus 4 is hiring and retaining the best talent. And this is, of course, has always been near and dear to my heart. But this particular focus hits on 4 of the district-wide goals. Now, the outcome, the first one is increased retention rate of teachers earning an evaluation rating of highly effective. We did make a change here because originally we had this as effective as highly effective, but we thought, what do we really want here? We really want to get our very best and brightest into our schools and to retain them. The other thing, the reason why it's TBD, to be determined, is because you've heard me report over the years some of our raw attrition numbers. Those are just basically, we've been looking at cohorts since 2005 and reporting to you how many of those folks that we retained, particularly in the first 5 years. Now what we want to look at is we want to differentiate the difference between good turnover. There is good turnover, and there's also bad or poor turnover. So we're wanting to hold on to, again, these highly effective teachers, so we're going to start measuring and reporting the data out a little bit differently, and 2013-14 will be our baseline year. We are going to be getting evaluation data, which is being compiled now, and we'll report that back to you in September, and retention data will be reported to you in October. And I was about to say that I'll be bringing that to you, but I think our Executive Director of Human Resources, Dr. Pruitt, will be reporting that to you in the future. Outcome also is increased numbers of teachers in hard-to-serve schools earning an evaluation rating of highly effective, and increased retention rate of teachers in hard-to-serve schools earning an evaluation rating of highly effective. And we have talked about the efforts that we've been doing with our TIF schools, Teacher Incentive Fund, and we really feel that our ramped-up effort is going to help us this particular year. Finally, we have to have good leaders in these schools, so the increased retention rate of administrators earning an evaluation rating of highly effective, increased number of administrators in hard-to-serve schools earning an evaluation rating of highly effective, so getting our very best to our most challenging schools, and finally, increased retention of administrators in hard-to-serve schools earning an evaluation rating of highly effective. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Chapman and Arlene Mendez, who will take you through the objectives.
Good afternoon. Objective 4.1, ensure that all schools are led by a highly effective or effective principal and assistant principal, or if there's more than one. That's very important if we hope to attain any kind of success, and I think that's going to help with the retention as well. And Objective 4.2, attract and hire highly qualified and effective teachers, administrators, and support staff. If we can do that, that will be a huge hurdle, and it would be very successful, because I feel that when we look at some of the schools that have not done well, if we really break it down, we realize it's a high mobility rate among the teachers, the staff members, and we need consistency in these schools, and you'll find out that the zip code won't matter.
Good afternoon, school board and Dr. Graham, our superintendent. I'd like to express my gratitude as a support staff to be able to sit with this amazing strategic planning and have such great conversation with these experienced executives, people from all different backgrounds, and the perspective that we gained was eye-opening. It was wonderful, great positive, great energy conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed being a part of this working group. The third objective is to retain and support the growth of high-performing teachers, administrators, and support staff. I feel very passionate about this particular one. I had the privilege last school year, to be a part of staff development, and firsthand I got to see all that goes into in the education systems that teachers and principals, administrators have to go through to keep up with the changes and the challenges, and just to stay at speed with everything that's going on. So we feel that our work group felt it was very important to support and invest and validate in our teachers and our administrators for continuous growth. Thank you.
And now it's my privilege to introduce to you the member, excuse me, Dr. Atkins. Thank you. My privilege to introduce to you the representatives from Work Group 5. This was the team that I was fortunate enough to lead. With me today are Cindy McClung, our coordinator for quality here in the Curriculum and Staff Development Center, and as you have met already, Roger Chen, who's the Vice President of Organizational Transformation for the Lee Memorial Health System. So our focus group worked on strengthening district support systems, and as a former principal, not too far out of that seat, I can tell you, and as a mother of 2 children here in the district, it's very important that we have tremendous support systems in place. I remember teaching in the classroom, and my 36 children, yes, that is true, 36 fourth graders when I left the classroom, it was very important that I had the ability to spend time with them, to make sure that my focus was 100% on them. And the reason I had the privilege of doing that was because I had a tremendous support system at my school. And as a mom, I am thrilled when I walk into a school, my children's school, and I see a tremendous support system in place, because I know that my children's teachers get to focus on teaching and learning, and the rest of the staff is doing everything they can to remove those barriers, those hurdles, so that my children receive an appropriate education. So I really appreciated being part of this focus group. So our task was to look at how do we do that? And part of our discussion was on continuous improvement. And Roger spoke very eloquently to the importance of continuous improvement, to leading changes that happen in an organization. And the 2 areas primarily that we have focused on in our outcomes have to do with excellent customer service. And we are looking both at our internal customers as well as our external customers. So again, looking at the percentage of internal customers, and we want to segment that by group, so principals, teachers, support staff, et cetera, that report that they have received excellent customer service. And we obviously need to design a system to measure that. That's why you see the NA. We're also doing that for external customers. So I guess I would wear both hats in that scenario. So I'm a mom, and so we certainly would look at all of our families as well as our business and community groups. How do they feel when they come to our schools, to our district level? Are they receiving appropriate and what we will categorize as excellent customer service? So again, another NA on our baseline. That is a system we need to design, whether it's a survey or an on-the-spot type of experiential reporting. We need to design that as well. And then finally, we want to look at increasing the number of schools that participate in the continuous systemic improvement. We know that as CSI Lee site visit process. And once again, that is a process that we have had in our district. Again, as a principal, I was part of this with my school. We had an opportunity to go visit Heights Elementary. When I was principal at Pinewoods Elementary, we went there, we looked at the 7 categories of Sterling, and we were able to visit classrooms, interview staff, and we had the opportunity to provide them with strengths and opportunities. Things we saw as a colleague down the road in Acero, what were those things that we saw that were really working at their school, and then what were some of those opportunities? Not bad things, just something different, with something you could be doing to move your school forward. And then on the flip side of that, at Pinewoods, we also received a visit. We had Tropic Isles Elementary come visit our school, and they visited with all of our teachers, all of our support staff, myself, my parents on the SAC, the PTO. They met with children, and they heard all of the wonderful things and all of the things that we needed to work on as a school. And then Tropic Isles had a report out to my 108 staff members. We sat down and we talked about what are those things we're doing well and what are those opportunities. And I can tell you, having participated in that process, it was pretty eye-opening. It was extremely helpful, and so that's something that we want to resurrect in our district, because it really allows us to focus on those 7 categories of Sterling, things like senior leadership, things like your strategic plan, looking at your processes, and of course at your results. So that's what we would like to advocate to be done district-wide. And now I'm going to turn it over to Cindy and to Roger, who will share with us some of the information relative to our objectives.
Thank you, Dr. Carlin, and good afternoon, board members and Dr. Graham. It's a privilege to be here. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to work on this strategic plan. It is, to me, the most important work we can do in the district, because it's going to guide how we move forward for the next 3 years. I'm going to start with Objective 5.1, utilize a sustained, systemic, and systematic approach of continuous improvement. And I really want to highlight 3 words there, starting with sustained. I know that you have been around our district for a long time. You know that we've had starts and stops in our efforts for continuous improvement. And if we are to truly reach our greatest potential and our students are to reach our greatest potential, it's very important that it be a sustained effort. The next word is systemic. And that means that we're not just doing it in my office where it says Coordinator for Quality on the door, but we're also doing it in every department and in every school throughout our district. And then systematic, that it's not something we do when it's time to renew the strategic plan, but it's something that we do every single day. That we have processes in place that will help us on our road toward continuous improvement so that we see information on a daily basis that helps us choose the best direction to go, whether it's in the classroom or at the district level. Roger, did you want to add anything about that piece before we go on to the next?
Let's pick it up in my next one.
Okay. Then I'm going to go on with 5.2, which talks about ensuring that all employees provide internal and external customers with outstanding customer service. You heard Dr. Deming mentioned earlier. Dr. Deming says said, it doesn't say much anymore, said that he who directly receives your product or service, that's your customer. And we need to keep that in mind at all times. So how do we know if we're providing that excellent service? Well, the only way we really know is to ask. So we want to move forward in our district and make sure that we do ask, and not just every 10 years. We want to ask on a regular basis, at point of service, on a regular basis throughout the school year of our students. Are you getting what you need in order to learn? From our parents, are you satisfied with the processes that are in place at your school? From our district, are we supporting the schools in ways that we need to be doing that? So we felt this was a very important objective for us as well. And now I'm going to turn it over to Roger for our third objective.
Thank you, Cindy. On the dais in front of you, you have a diagram to guide through this conversation. It's just a little funnel. And going back to the thought I shared earlier about mindset, then skill set, then tool set. This skill set of having a system is indeed a set of tools that has to be learned. But concurrent with teaching tools is teaching how to use the tools so they're used efficiently, effectively. And if we think about what drives sustainability, it's developing the competency of the people doing the tasks. And so that's why it's so important before we jump into it's great to start with the end in mind. We want continuous improvement. We want ideas. But then what are the presuppositions, the preconditions that need to exist in order for that to happen? That's where our work group was able to spend a fair amount of time digging in, with folks from industry, with folks from the school system, and this nice blend of cross-pollination from different experiences, different institutions, if you will. And so this thought, which we spend a tremendous amount of time on, one of the tools which you've heard John reference earlier, which you already have in your school system, is that of Plan, Do, Study, Act. The Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle is the definition of a continuous improvement cycle. You try something, you experiment with it. The trick is, once we get out of the classroom, we still continue to check, did we get the results we want, and then what adjustments do we make to it? Now, the underlying structure, before we run off and improve things on continuous improvement, and why this Plan, Do, Study, Act process is so important. The lean approach to this is first to stabilize an environment. First we stabilize, then standardize, then improve. And so this thinking of we want everyone to know how to improve things, if you think about it, if we ask people to improve today, we're really asking people to improve in an environment of chaos because everybody's doing it their way. And so the concept of standardization means we'll agree on what's the one best way. And once we get consensus on that, then that becomes the standard. Now we need a way to train that. And so there are techniques and methodologies to do that. But back to the mindset, before we get into the skill set, then the tool set. And so the diagram in front of you shows the difference in this approach. People show up every day, and how do we take the variation out of the way you show up? You know, how do we eliminate the firefighting, people running around, making sure everybody's in the right place, the schedules are properly done, all the supplies or equipment in place, the food showing up, right? Running a school's like running a mini city is what I've learned. There's an incredible logistical challenge. So how do we minimize the day-to-day firefighting that everybody has to do? That's the reactive part of continuous improvement. That's solving problems that exist. The other part is how do we, which is the work of this group, have outcomes we want to achieve. And then that's innovation. You're applying the same plan, do, study, act thinking to achieving things that haven't been realized yet, to goals you're setting. So both ways, you're getting ideas from staff, from stakeholders, and striving for improved outcomes. By doing this on an ongoing basis, by having PDESA become the currency, the problem-solving currency of the organization, now you create an environment for transformation. And that's how these things we believe go together. So I wanted to give you an image for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. And at this point, we are ready for Mrs. Valeris, and she's going to lead us through Working Group 6's work, Driving Decisions with Data.
It was a pleasure to be able to work with my working group. I just need to tell you that the experts over here, they would always end every work session with, reminders that it was now time to break and go take a break or whatever. And they would always need to come over to Work Group 6, who is in the house today. They are engaged as always. They were an engaged group. And but I hope that the quality of work that we were able to produce really is going to help us to move forward, because we all believe that using data to make decisions in our business is hugely important. And I would tell you, from somebody now with a very, very long career in this business, it is also probably the biggest difference that I think about when I began in the classroom, and how all of the decisions that we were to make basically were made with our gut. It was either the way it had always been, and if anything was going to be different, it was trying to use, your own intuition. For the past 15 years, we have been extremely busy creating data. We have learned to measure a lot of things that no one would have even thought were important back when I began. But I want you to, all of you that have ever watched a 6th grade boy try and find an assignment, his homework, in his book bag. Okay, he's dug over there, he's hunting, he's throwing things out. He knows he did it. Well, that's the way that we feel about the data in the district right now. We are covered with it. We know we made that report. Where's that chart? We don't have a system at this point that allows us to elegantly, efficiently, wisely use all of that information that we have collected and that we know can help us move forward. So, Work Group 6, 3 outcomes. Number 1 is about creating a system for all of our employees. A system that also offers the support. Some of the time that support is the tech guy that can come in and make that application work for me, because they never work for me. And then also sometimes it's just really high quality professional development to teach us how to use what's in the system. The second outcome is about dashboards, personalized. I was a building level principal for many, many years. I needed a set of data on my desktop that provided me information about my student community as it compared to the district, the state, the nation, and that's what it needed to look like. Now that I'm an executive director and looking at lots of schools, my dashboard would need to be different. Every one of the dashboards, whether you're a bus driver or a teacher or a student or an executive director, needs to be customizable. And finally, the last of our outcomes is about using all of this data that we're so busy creating, collecting, formatting to improve student achievement. To be able to achieve these 3 outcomes, we have identified 5 objectives, and I'm going to turn things over to Brandy Macchia. Brandy is the principal and has been part of the journey for a number of years for the Story About Quality at Tropic Isles Elementary.
And I'm going to tell you that basically what's different about our objectives than a lot of the others is they don't stand alone. So ours are built more on a hierarchy because we had lots of conversation, and like Jean Ann said, there were lots of times that everybody else took a break and our work group was still sitting there having conversations of, well, is it really our job to figure out what the bus drivers need to know? Or is it really our job to figure out exactly what the personnel specialist needs to know? Or is it our job to help come up with some goals and objectives around how do we develop those? So that's kind of where we went with this. So objective 6.1, and I'm not going to read it to you, I'm just going to kind of give it to you in a nutshell, is 6.1 for us was really about establishing what measures are going to tell us what being successful looks like. So that's about the departments, the schools, the individuals really looking at that and saying, okay, what does success look like for this department, and what's the measure that we can use to measure that? Now, what I want you to understand about these objectives is we are not about let's create more tests, let's give more assessments. This is about trying to figure out what measures are right. That means some measures we may say they really aren't appropriate anymore, so let's not use that anymore. There may be some things that we say, you know what, we may not need to give a test for that, we may need to do a survey for that, or we may need to collect the number of hits that a website has. So there's lots of different things as we began to build the indicators that we looked at that were kind of how can we figure that out. So 6.1 is basically about identifying what does success look like, and then what's the measure that we would use to figure out if we're really being successful. And then as you move into 6.2, 6.2 is making sure that we have the systems to collect that data. So if it is a survey, it's making sure that we have the survey system that we can use that may talk to another system that may eventually be able to lead into a scorecard. It may be that we have the system so the teacher doesn't have to take home 30 papers and figure out how it is. It may be that the bus driver, if theirs is arrival time and how many students are arrived on time, well, what is the little clicker that we could use on campus to make sure that it's arrived on time, that it goes and calculates to another system. So what are those systems that we need to then create, to build, so that we can accurately measure the measures that we know are important? And when we talk about it, we're not looking at 20 measures per department. We're looking at 2 or 3 measures for each department, and what are those measures that they need to look at, so that then now we have to make sure that we build the system to collect that data is 6.2. So then going on to 6.3, 6.3 then looks at making sure all stakeholders have access to that information. So now we've figured out what measures we know we need to have so that people can get the information. Then we've gone on to saying, okay, we know that we can collect it. Here's where all that data is going to go. And now we go on to 6.3, and 6.3 is about making sure that it's accessible, that we can get to it in a timely manner. It's not something that, okay, I submit, and then a month later you're going to give me the results. Well, no, because we've started to have that conversation now, so we're ready for the results right away so that we can begin to make improvements. So it's beyond just being internal. Internal is a school district, but it's also external. So we felt very strongly that this is something that maybe there should be a scorecard on the school district webpage that indicates if these are our 5 or 6 biggest measures as a district that are most important, that I, as the public, can go on and click there. I'm also a mom in the district, and so for me, I'd like to be able to go on to the schools that my daughters are at, although one is with me, that then they can quickly monitor and make sure, well, how are they doing in that? And as I prepare for a student who's going to high school, I can begin to think, well, now how do I begin to check high schools beyond just the school grade that we hear? What are those measures that we've said as a district are important? So then when it comes to things like school grade, it's not a surprise to anyone. We've already put the measures out there for the departments and for the schools of what we say are important, so the public understands this is what's important and here's how we're doing on that. And then 6.4 is looking at building the capacity so that people really understand and are able to now use that data. So first we had to figure out what the measures are, and then from the measures we said, okay, well now we have the measures. We want to make sure we have the systems to collect the data, to put the data in. Then we want to make sure that it's accessible to everybody, that they can get to it. But then once you have the data, we want to make sure in 6.4 that people have the capacity to understand that. And we're not just talking about internal stakeholders here. We're also talking about external stakeholders. So as a mom, when I get that report of a CCE from middle school, I understand what that means when my child has a 70%. And I'm not thinking that we have a problem. I can see that on a scale comparatively, oh, well, that's really in the good range, because I may not completely understand what that looks like. So how do we begin to train, if you will, for lack of a better term, people on what that data really says and what it means? It doesn't mean we have to bring everybody in for a 3-hour in-service. It's about what information can we provide to make sure that people understand that. And then 6.5 moves into having the system. So now that is, once we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, in theory, 5 should now all work together. So 5 is that we have a system-wide system for monitoring, analyzing, and improving performance across the district. So now we can look internally, externally, everybody has that. We did have a lot of conversation within our group that it probably would look something like a scorecard. It may not, and that's where we've said we don't want to get trapped into that that's exactly what it looks like. It needs to be in some way. I as a principal need different information than I need to have as a parent, than I may need to have when I was in the classroom as a teacher. So those are all different things, but we need to make sure that we have a system so that what Tropic Isles is looking at is the same thing that the school 3 roads down or 3 miles down the way is looking at, that we have that consistent system. I can customize it and Tropic Isles can look at additional information, but there's still a systematic system in place that we're all consistently looking at the same things. And that's our 6.5.
Good afternoon, Dr. Graham, members of the board. It is my pleasure to be one of the representatives of Working Group 7. I am Amy Desamore, and I have with me today Mr. Mark Mora, who's the Director of Growth and School Capacity, as well as Mr. Snell, who is the Director of Construction Services. Mr. Tufo, who is the COO of Suffolk Construction, was unable to be here with us today because of an out-of-town commitment. But we thank him for his participation as well. I did want to recognize that we have several members of our working group committee in the audience, and I really appreciate their participation. It was a lot of fun. And within our focus area, so focus area 7 says that we will allocate the district's resources strategically to ensure that all children have the opportunity to reach their full academic and personal potential. Now, this focus area is in support of all 4 of the district's goals that were outlined earlier by the steering committee, and we realize that as employees, as community members, and as parents, resources, both the amount of and how we allocate and utilize those resources, can have a profound impact on how we are able to achieve the goals that you see in front of you. So as we look at the outcomes that we determine within this focus area, and there's 3 of them, we feel that they are intuitive. First of all, we wanted to ensure that we increased the revenue that is available to the school district. Amount of resources is a very important part of how we deal with resources within the district. So the increase of revenue was one of the outcomes that we defined. As well, the use of those resources, or the streamlining of our expenditures, is also an important piece as well. So one of our outcomes speaks to decreasing or maintaining the amount of, or the percentage of, non-staff expenditures as a percentage of the total budget. We feel like it's important to show accountability to all of our constituents, employees, students in the community, and we want to make sure that we're utilizing our resources as efficiently as possible. And then the last outcome that we identified was increased seat availability for our current and future students. We know we've had lots of conversations related to that we are a fast-growing school district, one of the fastest-growing school districts around the state. We're now, I believe, the 33rd largest district in the United States. And so it is important that we are providing availability for all of our seats for all of our students within the district. And as well, some of our objectives speaks to not only the availability of seats, but what those seats look like within the district in terms of the quality of the seat, what's inside of the building that houses the students in terms of maintenance and in terms of technology. The quality of the facility is very important. We have 6 objectives that we outlined within the focus area, and so I'll introduce Mr. Mora, who will come to speak with you about several of these.
Good afternoon, board members. I have the distinct pleasure of presenting to you the first few objectives that Team 7 worked on. As Dr. Desamore says, increasing revenue streams is very important to the district, and Objective 7.1 focuses the district on innovative ways to augment what we already have for current revenue streams. Those would include looking at grant opportunities that improve or increase the award rates and revenue streams coming from them, building partnerships to increase contributions and in-kind services. It also entails looking into researching endowment opportunities. All the while looking at these innovative ways to improve revenue streams, we want to look at what we can do to maximize revenue from our current existing assets, such as facility rentals. Objective 7.2 really is talking mostly about holding the district accountable for how the resources are allocated and transparency. Included in this are building an understanding about how resources are spent and how they're allocated amongst stakeholders, specifically our own staff. They also look at putting the money where the funding where the district priorities lie. It also looks at designating funds for programs that have been proven to increase student achievement and growth. The last objective, 7.3, looks at maximizing the utilization of our facilities district-wide. That will include looking at the equitable distribution of students so that all of our capacity is leveraged equitably, and continually to analyze the student assignment plan, our current capacities, our grade configurations, as well as our long-range enrollment forecast to ensure that we have adequate seats for the students well into the future. I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Snell. He's going to present the last few objectives from Group 7.
Thank you, Mark. I think y'all are going to like me the best because I'm the last one. I want to talk a little bit about 7.4. On 7.4, it's fund attractor programs. One of the issues that we have now in the district is taking our facilities and determining what types of programs or special programs that we want to put into those facilities. I know, Ms. Morgan, you've talked about that recently. And one of the things in the strategic plan that we're talking about doing with that is to determine what these programs need to be, and then how are we going to fund those so that we can make those programs happen in an equitable basis across the district. So we're going to work real hard to do that in the strategic plan. On 7.5, and I brought a prop. I noticed one of the other gentlemen had a prop, but my prop is bigger than what he had. So is establish a district standard for quality facilities. The maintenance department has been working on what we call our capital rotation program for several years now. But this year the maintenance department with Jimmy Flock and his staff took this to the next level to get this ready for the strategic plan, where we have analyzed every school, every system in the schools, and what the program is going to be for replacement, repair on all of the systems and all of the schools on an equitable basis. And we will be tracking that every year. I'm going to say ditto on the technology portion because Dwayne and his people are doing the same thing on the technology portion. And if Dwayne was up here, you would probably be running into the 6 o'clock meeting, so that's why he's not here. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet with that. So as you look at the last part of Group 7, we are already started working on what we need to move forward with the strategic plan. And when they asked me and said that I was going to be the last person, I was in college when Animal House came out. So how many people are familiar with that? Okay. Well, I have waited 35 years to say this. Otis, my man, take us home.
Okay.
Always been my dream to fulfill his dreams. So with that, in very brief closing, I know you've heard a heck of a lot this afternoon. I hope it reflects to you the amount of work, the amount of energy, effort. You maybe thought I was being a little silly earlier when I talked about blood, sweat, and tears, but I was not. I, on behalf of UPD and Cross and Joftis, just very much proud to have been part of a process in which individuals were very much engaged. Your staff, your community, because the community folks don't have a paycheck that comes from the school district of Lee County. And they showed up and they participated in a way that really showed the real commitment to this district, and most importantly, to the students and to their families. So I want to thank you for our opportunity to be part of this process, and leave you just with this before we open it up for any questions. Your job is not an easy one, right? And the focus from you as it relates to the strategic plan around the goals, the focus areas, and those objectives and outcomes is a lot, right? It's a lot to swallow. It's a lot to digest. But I'm hoping that much of this is not new. Many of you have given us a lot of comments and suggestions. You've been participating. Some of you were at community meetings. Some of you have been on the steering committee. So this isn't new stuff for you. But I hope that you recognize that this, in terms of your responsibility as a board, it is huge, but it is doable, and that nothing that has been presented to you today is based in fiction. Some of it is aspirational, but it is not far-fetched. This district has the ability to definitely go from good to great, and I'm excited that we all had the opportunity to work with you to do this fine and very important work. So with that, I want to now kind of open it up to any questions that the chair or the board members may have.
I don't have any questions right now because I think they've been so adequately answered. When I first read through the draft of the strategic plan, I thought, has someone been reading my wish list? Or did I leave it somewhere? And I want to compliment not only our staff who have put in such diligent hard work and thoughtfulness, but to our community partners who really drive us in a way that we do need to be driven. As I listened to the presentations and heard those key words of comprehensive plan, collaboration, results, transforming the culture, and Roger's comment about as quality increases, costs decrease, and the mindset, skill set, tool set thing. I think that we are on the right track. I see here a roadmap for a plan of action. The school and business community partnerships that are so important. And they even put that word in there that I always love, and that's relationships, because I really feel like that renders so much result when we build those relationships with one another. And the only people who are going to benefit tremendously are going to be our students. They're going to be ready and have those skills and the mindset that they're going to need to be successful in the future, and hopefully then they'll be taking care of us. So with the health and wellness and the student services, and Dr. Graham knows that that's been on my, in fact, she said to me one day, well, if you ever needed a soapbox, here it is, when we got the accreditation report back. So I'm thrilled with this. I'm grateful, and I'm so happy to be able to be here to continue on with this. Thank you.
Morgan?
I also want to thank UPD, Cross and Joftis, and Denise, again, who's done a great job organizing a very difficult process in a short period of time. And the presentation today, guys, was terrific, because when I sat down and read through these 59 pages yesterday, I thought, thought, how am I ever going to process all of this? But the way you put the presentation together really helped me sort of bring everything together. Jean Ann Faleris, now I know what I was asking for. I was asking for a board dashboard, wasn't I? Yeah. And now I get it. Took me a while to get there, but I get it. And I want to especially thank Lee Memorial Hospital because I think one of the difficulties the district has is operational. Just managing an organization this size requires skill sets and competencies that are very difficult to develop within an educational organization. And I think that relationship for us is going to be very important as we move forward in the operational area. So thank you for your contribution. And those are my comments.
Mr. Armstrong.
Well, first I want to thank everybody and echo the same comments as my fellow colleagues. I know there was a lot of hard work put into this from community members, business partners, our staff. The presentation was excellent. And then with all the community members that actually showed up when we had these town hall forums. Matter of fact, I really wish I could show people the picture I have, because I took a picture when I was at one of the forums. Yeah. She's blushing because I think she knows why I'm saying that right now. You can take the principal out of school, but you can't take her away from the students, because when I turned around, Dr. Collin was right over there with all the kids, playing with the kids and interacting with them and getting them involved as well. So kudos to her for doing that, because she was getting their opinion and their ideas. But I want to thank everybody for putting so much time and effort into this, because we have a roadmap, a direction, and we have somebody at the helm that's steering the way, Dr. Graham. So thank you to everybody.
Thanks. Most of this proposal I see is coming back to this school board to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And I think if you tune in a little later this evening, you're going to find out that that's the consensus of opinion up here. How we get there is a much more difficult question. But I do have some concerns as I read through it, and that is costs that are involved. It's not, I don't see it coming without substantial costs, but not in a period of 6 months or a year, because we're talking about a plan that's going to develop over time. So it all doesn't have to be done now, but it has to start with laying the foundation and going on. But it is a challenge for the long term as to what the costs are going to be, not only the dollars and cents, but the cost of time for the people who are part of this organization. Does it detract from what they're supposed to be doing or challenged to do every day? And to what extent? Then does that create other problems that have to be dealt with? So I don't have an answer for that. I just have a question. And everybody's going to have to struggle with that one. I appreciate what you said about mindset, skill set, tool set. That's very important to me. We used to have somewhere in this building 3 plaques on the wall that said truth, trust, team. And they're very much the same kinds of things. You don't get the right mindset if you're not telling the truth about where you are and what you want to have done. When you do that, you're going to develop trust amongst all the parties who are involved. And when you've got that, the team is formed and you can knock any wall down. So I appreciate you making those comments, and I know it reflects much of what we hope to go on here all the time. One other, I'll say small thing, but it's not a small thing. I'm interested to know what gets in the way of cohort groups graduating in 4 years. Because when you have a quarter of students who don't graduate, something ain't right. And it may be the way we go about doing things. It may be what someone else, am I looking towards Tallahassee, is asking us to do, demanding that we do. Okay, but that's of interest to me. How do we overcome that? Because I can tell you a lot of people in the public say 5 years to graduate high school, 6 years to graduate high school. That wasn't the way we used to do it. We got to have answers for that. So those are, I guess, my comments. And would you like to hear from the audience?
I think Otis had something
Okay.
he wanted to say to something you said.
Chairman Scott, just to your first point regarding funding, I just wanted to put out there that part of the work of the strategic planning process, particularly the concern you raised that would some of this kind of get in the way of some of the other work that people are tasked to do. But ultimately, the reason why you do your strategic planning process, the reason why you have a business plan is so that everyone in the room is clear on what work they're supposed to be doing. And it starts to then set for this district your priorities, which then, of course, guides your budget. And it makes it crystal clear that there are some things that you can do right now, some things that you can't do right now. As a pastor once told me, sometimes, God will say yes, will say no, will say wait when you're praying, and we don't like the wait or no. But it is what sometimes occurs, and a strategic plan does that in many ways for you as a district, for the parents, for the principals, and that, if it is done correctly, and I believe this district has every intention of moving it from plan to implementation correctly, will guide your budget. And so you are correct that there are some things that are going to mean changes in terms of what you fund and how you fund it. Some will be able to occur through cost savings as you reprioritize, and some will mean that many of our partners, both those who know that they are our partners and those who will know that they are our partners, will have to help us to fund. But the reprioritization helps the district to go in the right direction together.
I appreciate you saying that, because that's, to me, the only way it can happen, is that we refocus based upon the strategic plan. And there will be many things that I think that we do today that we won't do in the future. And that's okay, because some of it's just habit moving us in the right direction, which is encapsulated in the district's mission statement very clearly. We're here for students, not for us necessarily, and we have to do what's necessary to help them out. So, thank you.
Mr. Scott, I just want to add to what Otis said, or maybe just affirm what Otis said. You all forced a commitment from me. You didn't have to force it, but I gave it to you, and you asked for it, that if we took the aggressive approach we took to getting a strategic plan in place, that it would impact the work we do, it would impact the budget and how we allocate our resources. And I will tell you that every work member group, the steering committee, all of the people who worked on this, that commitment was shared that this is the real deal. We're not just writing a plan to put on a shelf. This is going to guide the work of this district. And so we started with what was shown to us in accreditation. We looked at where we currently are. We studied data that we do have. And we got fabulous input from a lot of really smart people throughout the community, and a lot of people just engaged in the work here that want to see the district go in a direction that they believe is good for kids. So there is no question, I can tell you as long as I'm sitting here, that the strategic plan is going to drive the work. And I thought the exact same thing that Otis said to you when you said there are other things. There will be no other things. This will drive the work. And I think leadership is clear on that. And as we go forward, I think everyone will be. And there's such value in that, because everyone then can move in the same direction. And the tunnel that Roger shared with you reminds me of the arrow that I used to use. And when we're all working towards the same direction, then you have some hope of becoming a quality organization. Right now we have a lot of misdirected arrows. And so this will give us all a framework upon which to begin our work all in the same direction. So that commitment stands that we made when you all gave us permission to get a consultant rather than try and do this on our own. Though I will tell you, staff and community did a lot of work, and the UPD and Justice, thank you. I just lost it for a minute. I looked over and you guys messed me up. But I can tell you that their work to guide us through the process was very helpful. But this is indeed a plan that was developed by this community and by this staff. And so because there's that initial ownership, I think it's going to be even more powerful as we move forward. And I'm grateful to everybody that's here and those that aren't here that participated in it. It was probably harrowing for Denise because she had to coordinate a lot of stuff in a very short period of time. But it's exciting to see the end result and that you all are so willing to look at it this positively. And the presentation today, honestly, it even brought clarity to me on some things I wasn't so sure about. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate again the focus you brought to it and your commitment that that's the way it's going to go ahead. And we cannot slip off the deck and hope that we can climb back on the ship once it's headed down whichever direction it's going. So I appreciate it.
So what I need to hear that we have consensus to move forward, and I'd like to bring this plan as a recommendation in September. If you have more feedback, this is an ongoing conversation. What's not here are the action steps to get there. And those action steps were purposely not developed because we wanted to see if the goals we have were acceptable, if the outcomes were acceptable, and if the objectives you believed were going in the right direction. If that's the case, and we can get that much approved in September, then we can begin the action steps, which is another piece of the process. Yes, ma'am.
Just one question. I do have a bunch of questions and observations, but I'm not going to bring them up here. Okay. To whom do we direct our questions or comments about the plan as you finalize it before you bring it to us for approval?
Send them to me, and then I'll work with UPD and Denise. Okay.
Anyone from the local media involved in the process?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we had Ms. Chan from the News Press as well as Mr. Eberly from the News Press as well. I'm trying to remember if there were others.
And Mimi is on the steering committee, and that's the group that will continue to come back and as we look to see if we're making progress, it's the steering committee that will continue to work with us, and they'll come back and say, yes, those were the indicators we said we would look for. So the steering committee is an ongoing part of this process.
Thank you. Any other questions? Final comments? Ms. Fisher?
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Great job.
Mrs. Morgan?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Graham? Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir.
Can you keep us out of jail for another day?
I'm working on it. Yes, sir.
Sorry.
That's a full-time job, huh?
For me.
And we thank you guys for the work you did. We appreciate it very much, and we'll go from here. So if there is nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting, and we'll reconvene at 6 o'clock for the action meeting.